Everyone is suddenly saying AI agent. Almost nobody can tell you what it actually is. And the difference between a chatbot and an agent is the single thing about to reshape how work gets done over the next few years. Not in a vague science fiction way, in a very boring practical way that will show up in your job. So here it is, in plain English, no jargon, in about 5 minutes. You have probably already used one without noticing, and you will use several more this year whether you choose to or not. Here is the whole distinction in one line, and if you only remember one thing, remember this: a chatbot answers, an agent acts. Everything else you will ever read about agents is just detail hanging off that one idea. One of them talks to you about the world, the other one reaches into the world and changes something. Hold on to that sentence, because every confusing headline you read about this topic resolves the moment you apply it. A chatbot works in a single turn. You ask a question, it produces some text, and the exchange is finished. It has no hands, no ability to press a button, no way to change anything outside the conversation. It is a brilliant assistant, locked in a room with no doors, who can only shout advice through the wall. It can tell you brilliantly how to do something, but it cannot go and do it, and that gap is everything. An agent starts from a goal instead of a question. You do not tell it the steps. You tell it the outcome you want, and it works out the steps needed to get there by itself. That shift from instruction to intention is what makes it feel qualitatively different to use. You stop micromanaging the how, and you start being responsible for describing the what clearly enough to be worth acting on. It runs in a loop. Think about what to do next. Take an action, look at what actually happened, then decide again, now armed with that new information. It keeps cycling through that loop until the goal is reached, or it runs out of room to try. That loop is the engine of the whole thing. If any part of that loop is missing, what you have is not really an agent, it is just an expensive autocomplete with extra steps. The thing that makes acting possible is tools. An agent can be handed a search engine, a code runner, a web browser, an email account, a database. Those are its hands. A model on its own can only produce text. Give it tools, and suddenly text becomes actions in the real world. The tools it is given define the ceiling of what it can possibly accomplish, which is why tool access is the real design decision. Take a simple request: book me a flight next Friday. A chatbot will explain, very helpfully, how one might go about booking a flight. An agent opens a browser, searches the flights, compares the prices against your budget, picks one, and completes the booking. Same underlying model, completely different outcome. That is the entire leap, and it is why the same technology suddenly feels like a colleague instead of a search box. To do that, it needs memory. It has to remember what it already tried, which approach failed, and what it learned 3 steps ago. Without memory, it just loops forever, cheerfully repeating the same failed action, because every step looks like the first step to it. Memory is also what lets it improve within a task, noticing that one route keeps failing and abandoning it instead of retrying forever. It also needs planning. A large fuzzy goal gets broken down into a sequence of smaller concrete tasks, exactly the way you scribble yourself a to-do list before starting something you find intimidating. The quality of that decomposition largely determines whether the agent succeeds or flails. Get the plan wrong, and every downstream step inherits that mistake, no matter how good the individual actions are. And it needs feedback. After every single action, it has to check whether that step actually worked. If it failed, it adjusts and tries a different approach rather than blindly barreling forward. An agent without feedback is just a very expensive way to automate being wrong quickly. This is the difference between a system that recovers gracefully and one that confidently drives into a wall at full speed. So why is all this happening now and not 5 years ago? Because 2 things got good enough at the same moment. Models became genuinely capable at reasoning through multi-step problems, and separately, they learned to call tools reliably in a structured format. Neither alone was enough. Together, they unlocked agents. Before that, you could have one or the other, and neither was sufficient to trust with anything that mattered. Strip an agent down to its skeleton, and there are only 4 parts. A model acting as the brain, tools acting as the hands, memory acting as the notebook, and the loop that keeps the whole thing running until the job is finished. Every agent product you have heard of is some arrangement of those 4. Once you see those 4 parts, every product announcement in this space becomes much easier to evaluate and much harder to be impressed by. Now, the part almost everyone skips, and the reason so many agent demos look magical but fall apart in production. Agents fail in a way chatbots simply do not, because their mistakes compound. One wrong step quietly poisons every step that comes after it. A chatbot that gets one answer slightly wrong is a minor annoyance you correct instantly. An agent that gets step 3 wrong can spend the next 20 minutes building elaborately on top of that error. Look at the actual math, because it is brutal. If each individual step is 95% reliable, that sounds excellent, but But chain 10 steps together and you are down to roughly 60%. Push it to 20 steps and you are at a coin flip. Reliability does not add, it multiplies. This is also why you should be skeptical of any demo that only ever shows you a 5-step task working perfectly on the first attempt. That single fact explains nearly every design decision in real agent systems. Guardrails, spending limits, restricted tool access, and human checkpoints are not bureaucracy. They exist because compounding error is the actual enemy, and the only real defense is catching a bad step before it propagates. Every serious team building these things spends most of their effort on containment, not capability, because capability was the easy part, which is why autonomy comes in levels rather than being on or off. At the bottom, the agent only suggests and you do everything. In the middle, it acts but stops to ask permission before anything consequential. At the top, it runs entirely on its own and reports back afterwards. Choosing the right level for the right task is most of the practical skill in deploying these things without creating a disaster. Most genuinely useful agents today sit in that middle level, and that is not a failure. It is good engineering. They grind through the tedious multi-step work, then stop and wait for a human to approve anything expensive, irreversible, or embarrassing. Speed where it is safe, a human where it is not. It is the same reason we let machines cut the metal, but still have a person sign off before the part ships. So where are they already working right now? Writing and debugging code, digging through research and synthesizing it, handling repetitive customer support tickets, cleaning data and shuttling it between systems that were never designed to talk to each other. In every one of those cases, the work is high volume, low ambiguity, and painfully tedious for a human to grind through. Notice the pattern hiding in that list because it is not the one people expect. It is not the hardest or most prestigious work that gets automated first. It is the most repetitive and most predictable multi-step work, the tasks where the path is well trodden and the judgment required is low, which means the safest work, at least for now, is the work that is unpredictable, relational, or requires taking genuine responsibility for a judgment call. So the valuable human skill shifts. It stops being personally executing every step and becomes clearly defining the goal, choosing the right tools, setting the constraints, and reviewing the output critically. You stop being the worker on the line and start being the director of a small, unreliable team. That is a real skill. It is learnable, and the people who develop it early will quietly get far more done than everyone around them. But be honest about the limits, because the hype skips this part entirely. An agent has no real understanding of what it is doing. It becomes brittle the instant a situation looks nothing like its training data, and its failure mode is to continue confidently rather than stop and admit it is lost. Treat its output as a confident first draft from a fast junior who has never admitted uncertainty in their life, and you will use it correctly. So that is an AI agent, a model given tools, memory, and a loop, pointed at a goal instead of a question. A chatbot answers you, an agent goes and does it, for better and occasionally for worse. Understand that distinction, and most of the noise about this stuff suddenly makes sense. Subscribe, and I will keep making it this clear. The technology is genuinely useful and genuinely oversold at the same time, and holding both of those ideas at once is the whole trick.